Hey guys, Devin of Michigan Gun Guys here, and today I want to talk about Dexter Taylor. Now, for those of you who don't know, Dexter Taylor, also known as Carbon Mike, on Monday, May 13th, was sentenced to 10 years in Rikers Island for the horrible crime of manufacturing his own firearms at home. So, yeah. We're going to get into this. I did want to note really quickly, this has been something I've been working on for a minute in my free time. I don't have a whole lot of free time, but I've been trying to work on this, and I've done a couple of recordings of this, and I'm just trying to get it clear and concise for you guys. So I want to go over some things pertaining to his case and why things kind of went the way they did. My hope is that you'll take something away from this that you maybe didn't know or forgot about, and that you'll spread the word so that people who don't know about this can learn as well. So I have my device here that I'm going to refer to a little bit as I go, kind of, and hopefully that will lay everything out good for you. So for those of you who don't know, like I said, Dexter Taylor is a Brooklyn-based software engineer. He's been a software engineer for 30 years. And about 3 years ago, he got into gunsmithing. And essentially what he started doing was he's buying 80% kits and finishing them and manufacturing firearms in his own home. It's worth noting that he didn't have the intention of selling these. He rarely even talked to anybody about them. He just thought the process of building them was interesting, and so he kind of geeked out over it. He only had, I think, at the time, 20 rounds of ammunition for the, 6-7 guns he had. So, yeah. It's also worth noting that he didn't have a criminal record. He was in good standing with his local gun club at the time, which he was a member of. And what he did is federally legal and legal in many states. And it was even originally legal in New York until things changed. So that's kind of where things start to go sideways. So 2022, after the Bruin ruling, New York changed their laws. And to make a long story short, after he had been manufacturing firearms for some time, his house was raided by a joint task force of New York police and everybody's least favorite three-letter agency, the ATF, because fuck them. And I'll never stop saying fuck them. So his house was raided. He was taken away. He spent some time in Rikers, and then recently they had his court case. And at the start of his court case, and this is where everybody who knows about this probably first, or where a lot of people first heard about this. During his court case, it was said by the judge that his attorney could not argue or even mention the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment doesn't exist in this courtroom. This is New York. Now, there's a bit of a reasoning behind that, but it's still bullshit, and it's a horrible choice of words on the judge's part. But we'll get into that a little bit down the road. So he ended up, they went through the trial. He ended up losing. And just this week, like I said, on Monday, he was sentenced to 10 of the 18 years that he was facing. And a lot of people thought he was only going to get 3 years, but that just didn't end up being the case. So this is kind of the point where I'm going to get a little bit into more of the details. So I'm going to need my device. All right. So prior to the Bruin ruling, which Bruin changed the game for a lot of laws, a lot of gun laws. So we had the Bruin ruling, and it changed a lot of things. And basically, because of that Supreme Court ruling, gun laws had to be re-examined under Bruin to basically see if they fit with the tradition of the Second Amendment. That's changed some things for the better. Other states like New York have kind of thumbed their nose at it and decided to do whatever they want. So prior to Bruin in New York, the requirements that came after didn't exist. You could just manufacture guns in your home, and as long as you weren't trying to sell them, you were good. After the Bruin decision, New York changed its laws to basically require the following. You had to have a New York license to carry. You had to have a FFL, which is a federal firearms license, and you had to pay a $600 tax stamp per weapon that you manufactured to register them. Now, I kind of want to go through each one of these one at a time. First off, we have the license to carry. Getting a license to carry in New York is notoriously difficult, and I have some numbers here that we're going to kind of quickly go through. So in 2020, 3,000 people applied. Only 13% of those 3,000 people were approved for a license to carry. This shot up in 2021 with about 4,600, which is, a little shy of 5,000. So 4,600 people applied, and 56% of them were approved. That shot up a lot. After Bruin in 2022, over 7,000 people applied, and only 21% of those 7,000 or so people were approved. Now, it's pretty clear that the reason why it shot back down was because of the Bruin decision. Because, again, New York hates gun ownership. So, yeah, you had to have a license. You had to have a license to carry, which was difficult to get. It's also expensive to get. You had to go through a $170 to $340 class. The class is 18 hours long, so that's a lot of time you have to spend on it as well. And the price variation comes from if you're getting your license with the intent of concealed carrying or not. So it's more expensive to conceal carry, obviously. Next, you had to have an FFL, which is a federal firearms license. Those are pretty expensive to get as well. Typically, an FFL is for if you're buying and selling guns as a business, if you're manufacturing firearms with the intent of selling them, if you're doing certain kind of maintenance work on guns. I don't know exactly what requires it versus what doesn't, but I know that certain things you do will require you to have an FFL. I believe part of it depends on if you're working on where the serial on the gun is. But the point is, it's ridiculous to make that be a requirement on top of these other requirements, especially when he didn't have the intent of selling any of this. Most people didn't even know he was doing this. It was something he rarely talked about. So we have our license to carry, we have our FFL. Now comes more money. You had to pay $600 per gun to register them. And Dexter at the time had 7 guns. So you had to pay $600 per gun to register them. Dexter had 7 guns. That's a lot to pay on top of everything else. You had to pay a $320 handgun license. You had to pay an additional $140 for rifle and shotgun permit. You had to pay for fingerprinting. That's pretty much everywhere, but it's still ridiculous. So that's another $88. So not including the cost of the class, which we already covered, you have to pay about $4,784, just shy of $5,000, on top of the cost of the class to exercise a constitutionally protected right. And that's ridiculous. So We went over the cost. We went over what, the requirement of this. Getting back to the whole judge saying that the Second Amendment doesn't apply in this courtroom. The reason why the judge said that is because Dexter did not go through the process of obtaining the licensing or the FFL or registering his firearms. And frankly, I can't say as I blame him. Particularly the reason he stated why was because he didn't believe that he would be approved for the license to carry. And I mean, if he wasn't going to get approved for that, what was the point of doing the other stuff? So he didn't believe he would be approved, and I understand why. If you look at the reasoning that they use to issue these licenses to carry, you have to have a good moral standing and some other vague. The whole thing is very vague. I mean, you can peruse it. I might have something on screen here for you to kind of take a glance at, but really, it's ridiculous. So because he didn't go through that process, that unconstitutional, frankly, process, that was why the judge basically said that because he didn't go through this unconstitutional bullshit, he can't use the Second Amendment as a defense in this trial. Which makes me think that the judge doesn't really understand the Second Amendment because it doesn't grant your right to bear arms, and it especially doesn't mean you can have all these restrictions. The Second Amendment literally is to protect your natural right from the government infringing upon it. It's as simple as that. But here we are, still fighting over this shit. So you're probably wondering what's next. I mean, obviously he was tried, he was convicted and sentenced, and he's looking at spending the next 10 years in prison for this. There is an appeal process. I know that his lawyer is working on appealing it. I know that several gun rights groups, Firearms Policy Coalition, National Association for Gun Rights, and I believe even Gun Owners of America have reached out to Dexter's lawyer to try and work with him on this, to offer whatever kind of resources they can, which is great. No surprise that the NRA is silent on it because they don't fucking do anything. But anyway, so there is that. Additionally, what we can do is what I'm doing right now by talking to you. Raising awareness, spreading the word, especially for people in New York who don't know that this is going on, who don't know that this miscarriage of justice took place. Spread the word. If you have family in New York, if you're in New York yourself and you have family there, tell them about it. Contact your congressman, your senator, your mayor, your governor, everybody who, especially politicians that are in New York, need to know that this is unacceptable. Additionally, Dexter did set up a Give, Go, Send to help cover the cost of his legal battle. I will have some form of link to that. I'm not sure how I'll link it in TikTok because TikTok's weird with links, but it'll be in the description on YouTube. And if you can't give, if you can't donate anything, that's fine. Just share it. Help spread the word. Share this video. Basically just, do what you can to make sure people are aware of this. This didn't get a whole lot of media coverage. Dexter did everything he could to raise awareness for his case, as did a lot of other people. But more people need to know. So, with that being said, this has been Devin of Michigan Gun Guys, and I will see you guys next time.